often said that data is the new oil. I think a lot of you must have seen this phrase everywhere. It's discussed in every conference. But the issue is oil needs to be refined and processed to become useful. Oil in itself, which you get out of the ground, is not particularly useful the way you get it. And in the context of data, extracting insights from it is often a tedious and a frustrating task. So we have today with us Rajiv Maskara from Qlik, who will describe how cloud-ready analytical platform can simplify business intelligence. So Rajiv has been working with Qlik as a solution architect for more than 3 years. And in this role, he consults with organizations on their BI strategy, often suggesting an optimal approach to user adoption, which is usually the ultimate metric for the success of any BI initiative. Prior to his current role, he has worked as a business analyst in Wipro Infotech, where he was instrumental in defining and implementing the BI strategy for the organization. So today, Rajiv is going to be talking about a cloud-ready analytical platform. So please welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Really a pleasure to be speaking about, data, the new oil, as he rightly said. But how do you oil that data? How do you make that oil really beneficial and run your car, which is your organization? That's what I'm here to speak about. I don't have the presentation on screen as yet. Yep. Thank you. Right. So the agenda for today really is, I've made it really short. I want to do a little bit of demo, talk a little bit about Qlik, what are it in our portfolio of products, and the demo part is really the 3 pillars of innovation where you'll see Qlik in action. So just to give you a brief about Qlik before I jump into it, we're a company founded more than 2 decades back in a city called Lund in Sweden. These days we are headquartered in Radnor in Pennsylvania in USA. Across the globe, we've got around 45,000 customers. We've got 1,700 partners. We're present in more than 100 countries. Currently, we have around 2,500 employees across the globe. But what we're really proud about, right, is the way that our revenues are growing. And that really gives us confidence that we are doing something right in the market. To be growing at that 27% CAGR over the last decade in an industry which is growing at less than 10%, it speaks phenomenally well about our product. Just to give you a snapshot of the 45,000 customers that we have globally, split it into verticals. We literally cater to any vertical that's there because data is essentially omnipresent. So you pick up any industry, we are there in the top players in that industry. But what's really going to drive the future? What we've seen are there are 3 basic parameters or 3 dynamics around this. One is that the first thing is, of course, the data. There's been an explosion of data. There's been an explosion of content. Literally every device, Harman, they're using the data that gets generated out of the devices. So it's not only us generating data anymore, it's even machines generating data. Corresponding to that, there's been an increase in explosion in the compute that's available today, in the amount of data or the processing capability that we have in the IT industry. We as IT, of course, know we've moved from 32-bit architecture to 64-bit. Even the kind of gigahertz processing capability that our servers have are quite powerful enough. Now, if you combine these 2 parameters with the third parameter, which is us, the humans, right? There's a new force of people that's coming into the organizations, the new generation of information activists. They bring a multiplier effect to the amount of data and the processing capability that you have in the organization today. And that, the combination of these 3 is what we think is going to play a pivotal role in how the BI is going to be adopted in the organizations today. So, but when it's about business intelligence, right, we usually think that it's visualization. But from our perspective and what we've seen in the industry is that visualization is not the only answer to BI. There are a lot of things that happen pre-visualization. There are a lot of things that happen post-visualization. It starts right from your, how you're going to acquire data, then how you're going to store that. Maybe you require some preparation around it for doing some analysis. And of course, you need to have a high performance database underlying so that when the users or your business users or yourself as users are analyzing the data, they need not, or if they have to wait to see the response to what they're trying to analyze, then that's that's not a good user experience. Even after doing that visualization analysis, it does not really end there. There's still going to be use cases where you're going to be reporting around it, the traditional reporting, static reporting. And today in the organizations, you've of course got some portals, you've already got some portals, you'd want to embed your analysis within that. Instead of having the user go to a separate portal to analyze the data, you'd want it to be part of your workflow application. So that we think is the entire spectrum of needs that would usually cater around BI. With Qlik, how are we addressing this spectrum of needs? We've got connectors for any kind of data source that you might have across the organization or even outside your organization. And I'll speak about that a little more. We store data in, of course, our format, which is highly optimized, highly compressed for data analysis. We have a scripting layer to do data preparation. The Qlik engine, right? To do any kind of analysis, you really require a high-performance database. And our Qlik engine really plays around to that, and it's our patented native engine, which allows you to do the kind of analysis that's possible. So you'll see that in action when I run through the demo. And of course, we've got the visualization to visually analyze the data. And what that hence allows is that you can build pre-built guided analytic apps. You can do reporting with our product called Endprinting. We've got the capability to have your, to collaborate and share with amongst your business users by a storytelling concept that we have within the product itself. From a mobility perspective, our applications are all responsive in nature, so it automatically adjusts to the size of the screen on which it is being viewed. So if it's on a mobile, it will automatically adjust to the mobile size. And of course, the embedded analytics, the power of our APIs then come to the forefront, where we've got enough APIs where you can embed it within a portal. You don't even need to take our visualization objects. You can just take the data from our high-performance database engine and have it interact with the data from your portal. So that is the kind of capabilities that we have around Qlik, which can address the entire BI spectrum within an organization. But if I were to summarize all this, right, what are the three primary things that you really need for a successful BI initiative? One is that you need to have governance around it. We talk a lot about self-service, playing around, even Excel is self-service for that matter. But then it loses out on the governance. You've got to validate the data all the time. So that governance is something that we wouldn't lose out, or we don't want to lose out. So it's governed self-service that we really want to focus on. So you need the governance. Of course, you need to have data, but when I speak about data, it's really the combinations of data that exist in the organization. You can't have data coming out from a single data. Even if you have a data warehouse, there would still be data existing outside that data warehouse. So you need to be able to analyze not only the warehouse data, but also the data sitting outside that warehouse, and be able to combine them to bring an analysis that's meaningful to the business users. And of course, you need to have a platform. So we've nomenclatured it or acronymed it as GDP. So think about it as governance data platform. Any BI platform that you plan to evaluate it on these three parameters. And if they fulfill the needs that your organization has, then it speaks of a good BI platform. I want to deep dive a little bit more on platform in terms of, these are the kind of use cases that we see across an organization. You can have centrally deployed guided analytic apps. These are your pre-built BI or your analytic apps that you've built. But then you should also allow the business to do self-service data discovery. So they should be allowed to create their own content on top of the content that you would have published for them. You also need the platform. The BI platform should allow collaborating and reporting around it. It should allow for, of course, visualization and custom analytics. When I say custom analytics, the ability to extract data through APIs and be able to use it in innovative ways. I'll speak about one of them. And the ability to see it anywhere. Business users these days are not tied to the desks. They are on the go on areas where even network may not be there. So being able to see it on mobile devices. geoanalytics, the where part of the data, right? You've got data, you're seeing it through charts, bar charts, line charts, and interacting with them. But to be able to see it on a map brings a totally different dimension to the analysis that you're doing, and you should be able to do that. So all this put together, right? If you think of a platform, these are the capabilities that you'd want to look in a BI platform. And the last two slides that I have, and then I'll jump into the demo part. This really gives an overview of the Qlik's modern BI portfolio. So if you look at it, at the bottom you've got the data part, where data can come in from multiple data sources. On top of that, we have something called Qlik Data Market, which really is our data as a service, where you want to combine your internal data with external data. So we've got macroeconomic data, we've got data around weather data, currency exchange, we've got data around data from many markets, so NSE, BSE data, all of that is there. Then of course we've got our products around it, Qlik Sense, Qlik View. I'll not jump into the details of it, but apart from the product, what we also think is important for an BI platform to succeed or BI initiative to succeed is that there needs to be an ecosystem around it. So from our ecosystem perspective, we've got the Qlik branch where people can collaborate by posting in additional additions to the platform that they have built on their own. And again, it's an open source community, so people can collaborate over there. We've got a Qlik community where there are more than, believe it or not, there are more than 200,000 participants over there. So that's 2 lakh people collaborating with each other. Anyone asks a question, there are hundreds of people ready to respond to that. So if you have that kind of an ecosystem that's existing already, then it makes for a successful deployment. So on the demo aspect, I'm going to focus on, these are the 3 pillars internally at Qlik, we try to focus on in terms of innovating in the BI space. It's around data, it's around platform, it's around analytics. So data is, of course, being able to, harness the huge amount of data that exists in the organization. How are we innovating around that? That is one that I'll demo around. Platform is how open is our platform in terms of the APIs that we provide? How can you use it in innovative ways? And the third is, of course, the analytics. What are the analytical options that we provide for data analysis? So let me just switch to the demo mode. I'll first speak about data. So, so Qlik being an in-memory technology, the moment we say we are an in-memory technology, people ask the question around what is the kind of data size that you can handle, right? And with today, the market where you see everything and anything generating data, we've taken a slightly different approach to doing that. So let me just first show you the concept, and then I'll show an application around it. So this is a very simple dashboard. I've not made it look attractive, but this is to explain the concept more than anything else. So behind this, you can assume that there is your plethora of data sitting behind it, maybe even gigabytes, terabytes of data. But what this application shows is that data aggregated in some way, in which the business user is able to interact with that and analyze that. But this is an aggregated level, not taking all the transactional data into this application. So the user can, of course, analyze, do anything, select here, interact with it, and he can do anything, right? But the key thing is that once he reaches a certain point, then he would want to deep dive and see the underlying transactional data, right? So let's say I select a particular, today I'm analyzing silver. What you notice is that the color of this keeps changing from red and green. So if I go back, when it's beyond 50, that's how I've configured it. It says red. When it goes below 50, it becomes green. And if you haven't noticed, there's a sales details tab kind of a thing, which gets enabled, as in it becomes green when it goes beyond a certain threshold. So if I were to remove that selection, right now it's disabled for me. So the moment I do that, it becomes enabled. Now at this point of time, what this allows me to do is generate a new app. So essentially what's happening is that for the business user, the selection that is made, it is going to your underlying data source, fetching the data for the selection that you would have made, and pulled out the transaction level data. So what we've done is, we've made the entire data that you have accessible to the business user and allowing him to deep dive even to the transaction level and giving him that Qlik experience or the associative experience that we speak about. So now I can open the detailed app that got generated and start looking at literally transaction level data. But to see it in real context, right? Let me just show you an application around this. Let's say I want to analyze the Twitter data. Now I can't be pulling all of Twitter data into this server in which Qlik is installed. So what I would rather do is maybe search for a particular term. So I'd say from Twitter, pick me a hashtag which has this next 100 event which we are doing right now. I do a search. So behind the scenes, it is actually going and populating a template, fetching data from Twitter, and putting it in a template which I would have earlier created, and populating it. So of course, the most common word is next 100 is something that I would want to see. And then there's a tweet from Vinayak around one day back where he's tweeted, I think this is the Mumbai event. And of course, I can go and read it on Twitter also in terms of what's been tweeted by whom, what is it doing. Then I can do certain other things, maybe look at, or let's just clear the selection and see who are the people tweeting, what are the followers that they have, how many tweets are they doing. So there is one person who has quite a few followers. If I want to just analyze his tweet, maybe it's not even related to next 100 that I tweeted. So it allows you to quickly analyze the data. I could go back and let's say, on Twitter, I could look for another search term. So for example, Qlik. Maybe the next 100 event is not, or the hashtag has not become really popular on Twitter. But let's say Qlik, for example, we have a very heavy presence on Twitter. So a lot of people would be tweeting with hashtag Qlik. So let's just see what comes on this. So now if I see, right, there are a lot many tweets. Earlier we are seeing only 4 or 3 was the highest number of tweets given by people. Let me just figure out on Qlik. And then we see there are people who are talking. There's Stephen Walter, who is one of our employees in the R&D division. He's talking about Donald Farmer, who is one of the well-known people in the BI space. And he's written about the recent and upcoming innovations at Qlik. So you can go ahead and read that on Twitter. And of course, you would have posted a link to the blog. So it gives you a really different way of looking at the data from your Twitter. You can go into Twitter and browse through the data, or you can pull this within Qlik and maybe even combine that with your internal data. So if there's a marketing event that your organization has done, what is the popularity of that event, how many people are tweeting around it? So all of that can be gathered. So this concept, right, of being able to first analyze aggregated data and then drill down to the lowest level when required, by whomever required, of any combination that may be required, is what we are calling the on-demand app generation, acronymed as ODAG. And it's really powerful. In the BI space, no one really is doing this except for us. The next part which I wanted to speak about was around platform. So let me just open a new tab. I might just have to sign in. Let me just check that. Yep. Right. So now I have things working. So this is again a normal dashboard that we are seeing on screen right now. I can go through it, analyze this, and of course interact with it. The moment I interact, things change, and I can analyze this. But as humans, right, you'd want to collaborate with other people. When I make some discovery, I'd want to maybe point it out to someone within the organization relevant for that particular analysis that I'm doing. So what I would perhaps want to do, and what Qlik allows you to do, is that you can, let's say if Yammer is your communication tool that you're using within the organization, You can use the APIs that Yammer provides, integrate it with APIs that Qlik provides, and build a communication around that. So right now, if you notice on top, I've pulled out this Qlik.com Yammer, and this app is related to a group of people that are interested in this app, and then I can highlight to anyone. So for example, I know that Anup, another colleague of mine within Qlik, is someone whom I would want to notify around certain analysis that I'm doing. So I can just call him out, hey Anup, this doesn't seem correct. Can we handle this or something? Whatever may be the business case, right? And I post this out. So what would then happen is that Anup would receive a mail, Yammer notifies him, and he would get to know that there's something that I have asked him out of him related to this app in this business area. I could look at other apps also within the organization. So the moment I look at expense management, for example, then there's a different set of people whom I could be speaking to on that particular app. So again, it allows me to do some analysis, but also allows me to integrate with another platform for that matter to build an experience that is seamless in the organization. And then coming to the third part of it, the analytics. So there are a few things that I want to talk about around that. So I spoke about the where part of the data. This is a sample app that we've built in Qlik, which talks about, it's about a retail chain which sells bicycles in 3 locations across the globe. And this app helps analyze their performance and also helps them identify if they were to open a new store, which is that location in which they should open that new store, and what are the ROI parameters around that. So first is, of course, the performance. They look at it from a geography. What are the number of customers? What is the penetration per 1,000 inhabitants? So remember, you've got to have inhabitants data to be able to use this as a metric. And of course, what is the revenue per customer? Then, of course, I can select any country, and it gives me the data for the individual stores. So let's just move on. And now what you're seeing here, right, is on the map, what we've been able to do is, for each store, the black dot represents the stores that this retail chain has. And what is the distance, or what is the area that I'm covering at a 5-mile or a 5-minute drive time distance. So usually what other people would do is, or other technologies would do is, create concentric circles around that point, because it's easy to do that. But what we have done is, we've taken the map, we've taken the data out of it, we've figured out what are the highways around that area. And of course, when there's a highway, the travel time would be much faster. When there is a road that's not convenient, we would not even consider that as an area, and we've plotted that on the map. So I can keep increasing it. So at 10-minute, what is the area that I'm covering? At 15-minute, what is the area that I'm covering? So it gives me a fair idea that this area is something that I've covered quite well. If I were to consider that 15-minute is not a big time for people to come and visit my store. I can, of course, combine them as a single area. Again, to talk about this, right, we're picking up individual areas, and when you plot it on a map, it's usually a polygon that gets created. Essentially, in Qlik, with Qlik, what we're doing is we're combining the polygons. It sounds really easy when you see it on a map, but to be able to do that, it's quite complicated, and we've taken the complexity out of it. We've made it really simple for business users to be able to do that. I could go on doing about the analysis, but I want to, in the in the interest of time, let me just jump to the other use case of where, if this organization want to open a new store, how does this help them do that? So now what this is doing is, in Sweden, it has taken all the inhabitants data, pin code area, clustered them, and given me a location that, this is perhaps the best location that you might have of opening a new store. But then the human intelligence part comes into it, where I, as a human, I know that let me do a selection. This area is where I know that there's a competitor of mine who exists in this area. Let me do a better selection. And I want to do, or I want to maybe not consider those areas. So what I can then do is just go ahead and exclude that from my selection, and of course select Sweden. Then it'll throw me a completely different area. Maybe I did not get that right. Let me just do that again. Yep. So maybe these are the 3 areas that I know that there is a competitor of mine that exists, and I would not be able to tap into these 3 areas. Can select that and say select excluded. And then it's throwing me a totally different area where it would be better for me to open a new store. So then I can deep dive into that, and as a business user, I'm getting to deep dive, dynamically around which area would be profitable for me. So let's say if I have my existing stores. Now I want to see if I open a new store in the location that you suggested, would it cannibalize my existing business? So when I see it on a map, I'm easily able to see that it's a totally new audience that I would be catering to even at a 15-minute drive time distance. Then of course, the last question that a business user or the businesses would want to know is, if I open my store there, what is my ROI around that? So then I can go ahead and figure out what are the inhabitants, what are the number of potential customers per year, of course, depending on a ratio that I would have seen earlier in terms of inhabitants to potential customers, and what is the potential revenue, incremental revenue that I would get per year. So I'm not cannibalizing my existing business. I'm able to get additional this much revenue per year. That is the ROI study that I would have done. And all this done geographically gives a compelling case, to open that new store in the location that we are thinking about. So this is, Qlik and GeoAnalytics combined, giving you that where data also within the Qlik platform. Sorry, there's a question.
You are talking about looking at a new geography to launch my business, right? So where I don't have an existing business running.
Yep.
That means on what basis of data are you even
Right.
bringing about this particular prediction here?
Right. So for this particular use case, the data that was pulled out was the number of inhabitants in all the areas that exist per pin code.
Okay.
And basis that, because as a bicycle store, all they need is that data, and then they can convert that to, if I have number of inhabitants as this much, what is the potential number of customers that I would have? And of course, there's a ratio around that you would have seen in their existing stores in the areas that they lie. The number of inhabitants converts to the number of customers with a particular ratio, and from each customer, what is the revenue that I can generate? Again, they would have tied that up to the existing data that they have in their existing stores.
So what is the value add Qlik brings into this? Because what you are saying is pretty much can be done with an Excel sheet.
In
right?
Excel sheet, absolutely.
So what is the value add of Qlik
So
here?
being able to see this geographically, being able to play around with that, it would take a lot of time to do it in Excel or any other BI tool. Being able to dynamically select an area and say that, this area, this competitor is there, so I may not be able to attract or detract the customers from there. If I were to exclude that area, where is my, which area is better in terms of ROI? So we were able to see that, we were able to get that quite instantaneously instead of having to, again, build your model all over again. So I've simplified it quite a lot here, but if you look at it behind the scenes, it's quite complicated.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Rajiv.
Hi.
Yeah, can you please let me know how Qlik is different from their competitor in-memory technologies?
Okay. So there are a lot of in-memory technologies in
Yes.
today across but I spoke about the spectrum of needs in a BI organization, right?
Yes, please.
We are one of the very few who caters to that entire spectrum of needs. You would have players who would cater to one part of that spectrum, but we cater to that entire spectrum. That's where our differentiator is.
Come again?
So what I said is that if you saw the entire spectrum of needs in a BI environment, There are a lot of players who would cater to specific areas of that. Either they would cater to only the visualization aspect, but they would not do data prep. Someone would do only embedded, but would not do the visualization properly. Someone would do only data prep, but would not do BI or the visualization properly. So we cater to that entire spectrum, is where our differentiator is. So you get one platform which is ready to cater to all the use cases within an organization, rather than having to procure multiple products to be able to fulfill that entire use case.
So a ready reckoner.
Sorry?
Ready reckoner solution for all the needs.
Yeah, a platform that can cater to all the needs. Okay. That's where we differentiate with against our competitors.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thank you.
We have a 10-minute Q&A slot after my presentation, so you're stealing into that time. So I'll just finish my part, which is another 5 minutes, and then we can get into the Q&A. So this was the geoanalytics part of it. I also wanted to speak about how we are doing the advanced analytics. So let me just show this for the last 5 minutes, and then we'll take up a little more questions. So again, this is a normal app that we are seeing here. Let me just delete this off so that I can show it right from here. So what we've done is there's an app, but we've given a blank space for any business user to be able to create, let's say, really advanced stuff like a K-means cluster, which would get data for a set of products, feed it to R, get the results back to R, and be able to visualize it within Qlik. So this is an expression builder, which is a helper. Basically, I'm doing a K-means cluster. Maybe I want to do it for products that I'm selling. So product name, and I want to do it against sales. So sum of sales, essentially, and maybe quantity also. I'll tell you what would happen behind the scenes. First, let me just do it so that you'll appreciate in terms of what happened behind the scenes. So I just say create master items, and I say close. And when I edit in my master library, there would be a visualization that just got created. And when I bring it to the canvas, it shows me data that's been clustered. So essentially right now, till now what I've done is I've taken products, their sum of sales, their sum of quantity, gave it to R, and R returned me a cluster number against each product, right? And that is where you see that there are 4 different colors to the product names, which have been clustered. Now, this anyone can do, where we are taking the output of R and visualizing it, right? But where we bring the difference is that as a business user, now I can already see that dresses is an outlier. Whatever I feed into R, dresses will always come out as a separate color, because that's an outlier. Maybe I want to remove it from my outliers and then get the cluster information back for the remaining products. Now, in a traditional world, what would have happened is that I would have told my data scientist that you remove this from your number of products that you've figured out in your clustering algorithm, and give me the output for the remaining 76 products. There is a ask, wait, and receive cycle that would happen. But with Qlik, what would really happen is, this business user, he selects dresses, and then he does something called select excluded, and at that point of time, he's getting the cluster number for the remaining 76 products, calculated dynamically. So at the back end, we are talking to an R engine, which is actually feeding in this data to R and getting the results back for the business user. So that entire cycle of ask, wait, receive, just goes out. So the decision making happens really quicker. So this is just a glimpse of what I had to speak about in terms of the 3 pillars. I spoke about data, I spoke about the platform, and of course this is the analytics part of it. Just to conclude, in terms of again stress home, in terms of the advanced analytics that I just showed. So what was the old way? The data scientist was responsible for these host of activities, right? Acquiring the data, preparing that data, creation of the model, which is really an expert area for that data scientist. And the business analysts and the business users were only responsible for interpreting the results, and maybe the business user taking actions on those. Any change they want, they would have to go back to the data scientist do it for me in this way because this is really not making sense. Again, dresses as an outlier. I know that it will always come out as a different cluster number. Why would I even put that in my analysis, right? So what we think would be that the roles, how are they changing? They are things that are going to change. So data scientists will have a role to play. We're not saying that he's going to go away from an organization, but his role will be more around the model creation, the clustering algorithm that is really required, a k-means cluster algorithm. That is something that data scientists would have to build because as business users, maybe we don't have that expertise to do that. But then the business analyst and the business user should be able to interact with that, with the kind of data that they have an understanding of, which the data scientists may not have an understanding of. So these are the ways we think that the roles would change, and a business analyst or a business user would become more and more powerful by using the technology that we think we would bring to the market. So that's all that I had from a presentation and a demo perspective. Again, really pleased to be able to host or be a speaker at such an event. I think we have 10 minutes time for the Q&A. Now 5 minutes because there was some Q&A before, but yeah, the floor is open for questions.
So one question is this application, this product on the cloud?
Yeah.
No, my question was, is it on the cloud right now so that we just go onto the cloud and we can start connecting our devices?
Absolutely. So if you go to qlikcloud.com, you can sign up. For an individual, it's free of cost. But when you want to use it in an enterprise scenario, then of course you'd have to speak to us and see how we can have a commercial agreement around that. But definitely possible on cloud.
Any other questions?
Do you also do sentiment analysis, tone analysis, and all those things?
So again, as a platform, we would integrate with a sentiment analysis provider and be able to analyze that. So like we took in Twitter data, we could have sent that Twitter data to a sentiment analysis provider and got back the result from there and again analyze that within Qlik. So as a platform, we are playing on that area where we would integrate with the areas where people specialize in and not reinvent the wheel ourselves.
Okay, thank you.